Hello out there, folks. Jesse Bear here, Abundant Living Ecuador, coming to you today from Loja on Friday, June 2nd, 2017. Video for you today on real estate prices in my region. I run the Loja office for Abundant Living Ecuador, and I just want to make a video for people who are, coming to this area to live and looking to buy and want to know, how far does their dollar go? So. Again, Ecuador uses dollars, so if you're, on a different currency, then, you've got to check that exchange rate over to dollars. If you're on dollars, then, that's your currency. So I'm going to touch, this could become a very long video if I were to cover everything. So I'm really just going to touch on the things that I think people who are probably listening to this in English would be interested in. So I'm going to talk about the city itself, Loja, more so finished products, so apartments and houses. I maybe briefly on lots. I'm going to touch on the Malacatos and Vilcabamba areas, which are popular areas, and then maybe briefly Zamora region as well, which is in the Orient. It's the closest to Loja for areas that the Amazonian region is the closest Amazonian region area of the Amazonian region to Loja. So starting in Loja itself. For apartments, you're looking at a range more or less of around $600 a square meter up to $1,000 or $1,100 a square meter at the highest end. Now, can you find apartments cheaper than that? Absolutely. They're just not something you're probably going to want to live in. So I'm sort of focusing this video on stuff that, if you're coming from elsewhere and listening to this in English, is probably going to be acceptable to you. So about $600 at the lower end of that scale, up to $1,000 or $1,100 a square meter at the highest end. So what does that get you? Really all the way down to $700 a square meter, and really maybe you could even argue $600 a square meter, and again, it all depends on location, etc. It's a pretty nice apartment you're talking about. If you're all the way up to $900 a square meter or above, you're talking brand new, luxurious, really, really nice. 700, you can still find really nice stuff. As you get below that, some, might be a little older, not quite as luxurious, and then, you get below 600, it's really not something that's super great. So that's apartments, and again, those are dollars per square meter. Feel free to convert that to feet if you need to. Houses is a little hard to put it's a little more difficult to put a metric on, so I'll just kind of talk, prices. You can find decent, okay houses for as little as like 80 grand, that would be totally comfortable and fine to live in, small-ish, obviously, and, not in the best neighborhood. I don't mean dangerous, I just mean not as the most sought-after neighborhood. And, obviously not super luxurious, but like decent, nice enough. Then you can get, obviously, all the way up into super huge, luxurious homes that could be, 250, like at the lowest end, as far as super large and luxurious, all the way up to, 350, 450, and above. So, but that's the thing, about Loja, if you're spending, let's say, 180,000 and up on a house, or even you can even argue maybe 160,000 up on a house, you're getting a really nice house. And if you're spending, 250 and up, you're getting, some real luxury. Now, there's some, if it's in a prime location, but it's not luxurious, it can still be expensive, but you get the picture. Moving on to Malacatos, Vilcabamba, let's start perhaps with lots. And so, if you're buying, you're looking for like 1,000 square meter lot or a 2,000 square meter lot, just to build a house on. Your price per square meter is going to be anywhere from $10, at the lowest end, all the way up to, around 50 at the absolute highest end. You can find a lot of nice stuff for, $15, $20, $30 a square meter. Again, this is for smaller lots, just to build on. So, again, not super cheap. Lots in Ecuador tend to be pretty expensive, and some reasons for that I won't get into on this video. But so that's lots. Then for pieces of land, that's kind of another topic for another day. But pieces of land are not super cheap in those areas. They are sought after areas. And it's just there's so many variables. It's kind of hard to put a number on it. So what I'm just going to kind of do is describe for you something that would be, a piece of land that has what you want. So it has water, has electricity, has access, has flat for building. Has the sort of characteristics that make land, attractive here. Again, and I'm talking Malacatos, Vilcabamba. You're really going to have to spend, and when I say piece of land, so now we're not talking lots, we're talking larger piece of land, hectares. You're really going to have to spend at least $60,000 or $80,000 at a minimum to get something decent sized and reasonably okay, and really higher than that in most cases. So you can up to 150 and above. That's kind of where you start to get nicer pieces of land, and that of course can go all the way up to $1 million if you're talking, or high hundreds of thousands if you're talking about a really prime, huge finca in those areas, in those regions. Houses, again, big range. I would say if you're coming here to those areas, and they're great areas to live, amazing climate. They do have a dry season, but great place to live. I'd say if you're coming with $110,000 to buy a house, that would be about as low as you'd want to be, and that's a little bit difficult. If you 120, 130, it gives you a few more options. Once you get up to like 150 and above, there starts to definitely be a lot more options. Between say 150 and 200, there's a lot of there's good options. And then as you get up to like 250, and in that range, you're in the sweet spot as far as there's so many options available to you. And then if you can get up to between let's say 250 and 350, now you get into houses on really larger, beautiful pieces of land. You get into more luxurious houses, and then as you get above 350, you're talking about real luxury. For 400,000, anything over 350 here. You're talking a very large, very luxurious home if it's on a small piece of property, or you're talking about a really large, well set up piece of property with a very nice home as well. So that really, I think, sums it up for those areas. Once you get in, and that's, I just kind of, it's interesting juxtaposition. So once you get into the Amazonian region, which in this area, the Zamora region is the closest to Loja, prices go down quickly. And, and people who are looking in that region would really just be looking for land. And again, I'm trying to sort of touch on the things that, people who would be watching this in English would be interested in. But in the Amazonian region, you can find land really cheap. So for between 30 and 80,000, but certainly under 100,000, you get huge, beautiful piece of land with water and a few fruit trees if you want them, and pasture land and access, and everything you could be looking for in a finca. The region. It can be humid and it can be hot depending on where you are. Although you can get up in elevation where it's not so much that way. And I think that really sums it up. So appreciate you taking the time to check this out. Hope it was informative. You can reach us on our CS&C properties as well on our website, abecuador.com. A as in apple, B as in boy, Ecuador.com. Toll-free line from the U.S. and Canada, 888-999-0948. My email is Jesse, Jesse, @abecuador.com. Thanks for watching. Take care.